This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Blichem abum b'shaim Hashem, Pascha Chodesh Sanje. Kapuyu zurück, hab ich gehad das Chie du, das Kunem du, gewinn damals noch, Puas Kunem, so zieh ich immer noch andere Kunem du. Psychomat Gelichtmann, schon Yosef Levinge, Mashiach Rosenfeld, Sende Moishe, Weiss, am damals gearbeitet, am so zusammenbringen, de therapists, mit de Mechanichem, mit Menschen, die es dienen, die ihm tun, in Kies Joel, sie ran zu reben, frie fragen, sie mich machen, also haben gesagt, du bei uns in Stutt, und versteht sich, sie gehen mit den Reben zu kommen, und das auch aufgetein sah damals, und das auch jeden geholfen sah damals, Baruch Hashem. Das hat sich entwickelt, sie am Halt schon, als man gedacht, von Office du, in Samstellen, echt auf erzählen Waad, nimmen durch, ab Gessel Frenkel zu helfen, sie kem auch het Heshi Weinbege, Schleim Ehrlich, Schleim Usha Tobe, die alle Iden, was helfen heraus, machen sich es so geschehen. Der handige Event, in Ochet Bechlal, was ihm geholfen, der letzte Jutzat, was sich so heinig groß von Reim, zugestellt sei stark, begiffe, bemummen, zu machen sicher, als die soll keine Fuhren geschieden. Jetzt sind wir going zu ein bisschen verstehen, von was ich stehe du. Jid Beis El Tufschien ein Dalet Beirich, aber ich gewähne bei Obscheren von Manza Einekel. Der Einekel heißt Avitzir Besura Sasche. In 2 Wochen zurück Jid Beis El hat gehad bei Mitzvah, Baruch Hashem, im geliked Film. Was hat zurückgespielt in der 10 Jahre, is a paar Stunden später Chaneke Zeit beirich, hab ich ausgefunden, als man rief es, ich bin in der Pasche von Huben a Kind, a Chasnegate Kind mit 2 Kindern, was mitschert sich berachnies und begashmies. Ich habe nicht gewusst, dass da so eine Sache wie Organisation, was heißt Footsteps, ich habe nicht gewusst, was das ist, ich habe mich gedacht, interessieren, habe mich gesucht von einem Chöre Parge, dass da so eine Sache. Und ich habe mich getroffen in Asami in Pasche, wenn ich wissen, wie zu gehen, was zu tun. Da habe ich dir geholfen, es ging Gitte Jiden, um mich mit sie gewähnt zu gehen, zu Kruder Rufschlitte von Wiensburg, aufzugehen mit ihm, mit Marewitzen, zu einem mamischen Kind aushalten. Wir reden von einem Stieb, was hat nicht gehabt, kein Radio, nicht kein Goyische, Newspapers, ungerät von Internet, ungerät von alle anderen gezäunnistige Sachen. Meine Tochter hat nicht gehabt kein Cellphone als Mädel. Nicht das Smartphone, nicht das iPhone, sagen wir Sachen, gut nicht. Und das hat sich gemacht, Mamisch kam 4 Jahre nach der Kassene, als sie sich getroffen in der Pasche. Ich darf es schon mal sagen, für die Juni, was meint, a Tate, was 30 Jahre in der Kassene gemacht, ein paar Kinder, en man begitten is am Magitschie, man andere begitten gehen am Magitschie. Wie man sagt, ich habe mich angeregt, der teure Gedille beim Okemeichert. Sie fuhrt, sie geht, der Wogen fuhrt, also geht, alles fuhrt. Und du trefft man sich in Asami in Klemm, weiß nicht, wie zu gehen. Woche durch später, ich bekomme einen Phone Call, als sie geht sich getten, der Mann nicht gewinnt, kann sich besser. Immer hat sich Mamisch gemischt, und wusste gleich mit Dutin. Es ist nicht gewinnt, vielleicht zu wem zu reden. Damals hat noch einer gesagt, der Ayid heißt Avi Fischoff. Ich habe echt Meure gehabt. Man sagt, er sei extrem. Geht Advice, was ist gegen die Teure. Wir gingen zu Bauer, Schlitte. Dadurch gerät mit ihm. Dann habe ich mich getroffen mit dem Avi Fischoff. Und er sagt, er hat 100% Success Rate, er rausnehmen von Footsteps. Da ist das kein Breit, was soll man tun? Da müssen wir gehen zu ihm auch. Wir gingen zu der Bauer da, in Baruch Hashem. Hat auch gemacht, dass ich nehme nach Druche, wo ich habe mal Schale, eine Schale, Haluche, die Schale. Er rennt zu der Bauer da, und sich dadurch reden. Und er so habe ich Tage getan. Und von dort ist er rausgekommen, hat er zu, als kätet noch, zu sei ein kleiner Eulem. Das ist mamisch, ich bin nicht gewähnt damals in der Stage, ich wollte echt unnehmen, ich habe gearbeitet, ich habe durch, ich habe mich beglaubt, unnehmen, weil er nicht damals genommen kann, Kinder, was am Chasne gehabt, er sagt, es ist beglaubt nicht, was er tut. Ich habe mich getan, eine größere Teufel, so als Akuris der Teufel, mit sich der Mann, als ich bin dort gesetzt, nach pro Jahr, und ich kann sagen, ich kann nicht gehabt, kann einmal so sitzen in Gruppe, sie soll sagen, eine Sache, was sie soll tun, Und sagen, was gehen fragen, jeder eine seine eigene das teure. Das bringt das Sibbe für uns, jeder eine darf du sein, verstehen, was man deal du, als man muss fragen, das teure, auf jede kleine Kitze Shahid. Ich habe mich manchmal gestellt, wenn ich nicht gewiss wusste, aber ich habe gestellt, ich will sagen, Pushit, auf meine Tochter, auf jede Sache, das ist Scheitel geworden ein bisschen länger, die Kleider geworden ein bisschen kürzer. Man redet nicht so viel von Kasachen, Kassirem. Ich denke einmal, Shabbos, Freitags, nachts, sie kommen zu den Licht, ich habe gesehen, dass es sich gefärbte Nägel, es hat noch kleine Kinder in Stief, sie hat Kalle machen, ich habe nicht gewiss, ich habe manchmal nicht gewiss, was ich deal damit. Buch Hashem ist umgekommen zu der Kruderruf und zu anderen, was haben uns geholfen, verstehen, was die Kinder machen mit. Und ich kann es aber nicht maß besagen. Der, was weiß nicht, was das ist, soll keiner nicht wissen. Und ich deal die jetzt jeden Tag für die letzten 10 Jahre mit Eltern, was mir rief mich. Ich sagte, Mama ist jeden Tag durch Phone-Calls, 2, 3 Phone-Calls am Tag. Buch Hashem, von dem, was ins Team Vacation aufschien, es hat sich schon getauscht, es war mit ungeheuben der erste Schabbos, sie gewinnen noch Eltern von Avitake. Für der zweite Schabbos haben wir angenommen, Messiah, sag Eltern von Hamainam, von Chassidische Jiden, von Eberul. In der Male ist, als uns haben wir geschifft. A viele ernstere Menschen, wo die Kinder sind noch alles in der Meistes, in Burg Hashem, man sieht Peiris. So du Jiden, du, was ist denn du, was haben wir schon gesehen, Peiris, Burg Hashem, ich darf rausbringen, Beschmoi. Ich denke, ich habe gehabt jetzt, Buch Hashem, ich habe gemacht, eine Wachnacht, der Woche, mein jüngster Sinn, was es Chasne gehabt, was hat sich auch gematcht, was ich kann sagen, als Buch Hashem, wegen dem, herrlich, als zum ungeheuben Gleich von Umfang, gelernte Neitre, ich bin eine gute Woche, etwas hat man ihm gechappt, ich weiß nicht was, ich kann nicht schon mal sagen, was an Matze wir gewähnt, ich habe mich getroffen, ein Sintig mit 4 Buchern bei mir in der Dining Room, liegen Twillen, 2 sagen nach Mittag. Dort hat sich das ungeheuben, aber Buch Hashem, mit Chasne, hat gedacht, wie es Ruhl. Ich weiß, dass ein Wab, hat Motze Shabbos Gesicht, ein Minion verbocht, ich soll keine rausgehen von Stieb, hat gemacht Buch Hashem Abriss. Ist das die Sache, was man sieht dazu, von was ins Team in der Weide, als wir können oben nachher die Kedische. Wo ich zurück, aber gerade davon kommt Motze Shabbos, ein Kurvmann, als da ein Buch, was weglaufen von Stieb, hat gesagt, als der angelegt an Zitzes, ich nehme 2 Schreuren, die umbrechende Beine. Was heißt, der Buch von 19 Jahre alt, 18,5, 19, geht nicht in die Yeshiva, gewollt keine Arbeit, ne, geht's. Der Mann ist geräutet, sein Rebbe, sein Ruf, hat gebeten, soll kommen zu mir in Stieb, mit seinem Rebbe, so gesetzt an 4 Schuhe. Maß besonders, was der Buch macht mit. Der Buch arbeitet, bei Gewinn bei mir bei der Wacht nach der Woche, Montagnacht. Der Buch ist lechtig, chassidische Saat mit der Woche, mit der Stoffene Hit, mit kraltige Peis, riet nicht der Boot, hat weggeworfen sein Smartphone. Das ist dazu, als man weiß, was man dealt mit. Ich will nicht aufhalten, Leute, ich habe Sachen gemacht, ich kann nur reden nach Schutzart. Ich weiß, ob Stimmen du speziell von der Ruhe. Es du, hat er weggegeben, Mama, ich hat nicht gezahlt. Ich weiß, Appointments nehmen 2, 3 Jahre. Ich weiß eine Sache, I'm sticking with Ki Yisrael. Am Seim gekannt ihm nehmen, hat 3 Jahre Waiting List zu kommen, soll du kommen in der Hand. Ich meine, als so mal Sache wait, wie man so getan. So, ich will beten, jeder eine, als Stimmen du reden, sondern wissen, es ist Aid, was hat gehabt, was hat bekommen Smiche, 35 Jahre zurück, 36 Jahre zurück, kennt wer rufen, aber Smedrisch, wie man sagt, das hat gewollt. hat im Sehen Aiden Keul, was hat sich gematcht, und gehalten, ein Sogen, mit einem Sehen Zettin. Der Aid, noch ein paar Duschen, ist nicht du mit uns, hat gesagt, wenn wir etwas sehen Zettin, eine junge Fragen, Gedäule, man hat das Ruhl, sie haben gesagt, Rabunem, Dayunem, haben uns genick in Lakewood. Der Therapist, der noch nicht gewähnt damals. Mit dem geheißen Aranga in der Field, als er werden ein Therapist. Hat nicht gewusst, als geht da von seinem Limit benissem, in allein auf sein eigener Wut sich darf sich auslehnen. Hat mitgemacht mit eigenen Kindern. Und ich habe geschrieben, gehabt das hier zusammen bei einer von seinen Kindern in Florida, Tag FIU, in North Miami, in Hollywood heißt es dort. Er gab von Abbas Medrisch, hat Drusches, es bald viele, was allein rausbringen, ein bisschen die eigene Sachen, was gedealt mit. Aber man redet nicht von so viel Chitz. Buch Hashem, alle reden, es kommt, was kommen sind sich Abusam, es kommen und sie reden, sie haben mitgemacht, sie machen mit. Ich will noch endigen, wie man sagt, in Closing. Die Eltern, was kommen sind sich Abusam, sie werden andere meine Eltern. Weil das wir sein machen mit, Thomas wollten gelümmen daheim, ist es ein eigenes Problem, zu das Rahmen gut zu kommen. Man wird ein anderer Jid. In der Rabunem darf man wissen, du man redt nicht, du man geht nicht, du geben kann, Halucha Schales, man geht nicht, du sagen, wuss kann, druche, wuss man sollte ihn. Jeder Ruf darf verstehen, als man dealt echt mit Chayl Nefesh. Alle Tzadikim, ich habe gehabt, auf Hashem, das geht zusammen, etliche Tzadikim. Und jeder eine, was ist in der Pasche, wird ein anderer Mensch. Ich kann closen mit einer Sache, immer aber gemütlich, aber noch schlitte von Jahr, 2 zurück, hat mir gesagt, in der Zimmer, als sein Tat hat übergelost, über 1000 einiglich. Hat mir gewissen, ein Bild von seiner Tate, mit seinem Stieb. Sagt, hat aber übergelost, 1000 einiglich. Sagt stell dich vor, wenn jedes Kind, kijkt man auf einmal über Tausende, ob man anders dann gewinnt. Ich weiß eine Sache, ich hatte es hier zu reden, du von Tzadikim, Rabunem, Dayunem, wenn jeder Ruf, wo die kennt, kicken auf seinen Talmidem, der especially der Bucherl, der Tat, was mitschert sich mit dem Bucher. Sagen, ist ein Tausende, kann aufstellen an Moise Education Afschi, kann aufstellen andere Sachen, und wollte gekickt darauf anders, wollte man anders gedealt mit jeder seine. Ich habe zeigen, ein kleiner Maße, ich habe nicht einen Mann, habe ich geriefen, einen 23-jährigen Mann, mitschert sich mit der Kedische in Jünem Sachen, habe ich gesagt, ich darf mir helfen, was Tine, weißt du, was Tine kann das Schrei zu geben. Aber ich habe gefragt, wem hast du gesagt? So, ich habe gesagt von meiner Recherchive und ich habe gesagt von meinem Therapist. Wenn ich kenne Kirchchem, ich gebe mir Hock, doch das Telefon. Wer der Recherchive, ich weiß nicht, ich bin alles anonymous. Aber sind der Rabunem, wenn es kennt, haben die Talmidem, die Jiden beänken bis Medrisch, was wenn sie haben mal Charlie, und sie haben ein Problem, sollen wissen, sie können kommen zu sagen, Kamerad von ganz klar Yisroel. Okay, man Birch ist Kivas Chima Teuve, da geht gewünscht Tio, da Eibisch der Helfen, so rausgekommen, größte Kiddush Hashem, von dem Mama du, schreich.
Schiss Merunem, Rabunem, Rabuisai. Ich habe mir redt, für Rabunem, Dayunem, mir Ruhe, Joshua, mit denen ist ein bisschen schwer. Man hat mir gebeten, du, als einer, was hat gedealt mit Reb Shimon, hat mir geredet, Zia Ziber, was verzeiht ist eine neue Sache, soll uns ein bisschen Ruhe geben, was das ist. Emsig habe ich nicht, was muss jetzt an einmal, Reb Gedalia hat schon du geredet, was hat zu sagen. Ist, aber auf dem Spiel geguckt, ist das so. Jeder ist äußerst bezeugt, jeder mehr Ruhe, jeder ist Schiebe, weiß, wie weit Klaus Rom mit sich mit dem Problem. Und es ist nicht kein Einzelne, es ist keine jüdische Sachen. Es macht man am Beginn von neuem Beis, als er schon weiß. Und der Ziel ist, wenn Eltern kommen und sagen mir Sache, wird verloren, meistens heute schon zu wissen, wieso ich kann heute zu geben mit dem. Es kommt dann in Halucha die Geschales, man macht ein Pushet, man unheib, weshalb es kann er sagen, jeder Jid hat Chachiv Chinnach. Man sieht, ein Kind fühlt sich nicht auf, also es braucht zu sein. Wo es verlangt sich mehr, als man Chachiv Chinnach, als soll gehen, da tritt warten. Man muss sehen, der Chinnach hilft schon nicht. Man muss da Chachiv mit Teuchuche, damit es essen, man hat teure, Chachiv am Beseichu. En dan moet je dat geef maar goed. Wenn ze niet doen kan geef toch goed. Wenn ze gaat schon ran in een klauw van Cham Shemitze loimer door Hanishme, Mitze Sheloi loimer door Sheine Nishme. Is aber wenn du zart mes da geef maar goed. Maar de vrouw doen ik sim kippen neemt dat ze een laluche ze mag lekker schijnen. Al dat wis is doe Hashem. En is doe de Cham Shemitze loimer kach Mitze Sheloi loimer. Vergeet ze dat geef toch in Westen doen mensen kunnen zich opplanen. Is water doen is miati. Es kommt tun an jüdische Stieb, es kommt tun an Samen Metzies. Man sieht, andere Kinder sehen, wo sie sagen, sie darf nicht zusammen. Täglich fällt man daran, in Schales, la Lucha la Masse, wo darf ich nehmen, der nächste Schritt, wo darf ich gehen. Zudem darf man nur noch mehr Ruhe passen können. En amul gaat es weiter, es geht auf das Hype und zu kommt sich alles von Chive, Krisis, in Chile Shabbos, was man darf wissen, auf jeden dritten Schritt, wie soll man jetzt kann heizen, do. Amul hat man schaltet sich, was mit jetzt in heißt man sagt, aber weiter sind nicht, gedäume. Als ich dumme, hat verzahlt am Maß, dass ich geht mit ein paar Rufskinder, es ist gewesen noch ein Krieg bei Ruf Gata Yeshiva. Es ist gewesen am Mune, es gab ein 14-jährige Buch, hat übergelebt den Krieg. Es hat sich gemitschet mit dem. Der Rebbetzin, oder ja, Schulem hat Kirgen von dem Stieb. Sie hat gemacht, dass der Buch, umkommt zu Peiruf in die Yeshiva, wird es an für den Matthäus. So gleich der Druck in Peiruf hat er mal angenehm in die Yeshiva. Es hat sich nicht ausgestellt, also es ist stutz, der Buch ist auch heiben, ist gefallen. Ungeheben hat sich gesagt, übergekehrt die Yeshiva, man hat gedacht, Thema Neid zu geben. Der Rebbetzin geht am Minig, jede Woche, hat einmal eine Woche geriefen bei Ruf, was macht man Bucher? Und geämpft jede Woche, alle Probleme, was macht sich mit dem. Jeder Geist überschmissen mit dem Ruf. Geist überschmissen mit dem Reben, es geht in die Sprache. Und es ein paar Minuten später zurückgeriefen, habe sie überschmissen mit dem Ruf. Der Ruf war gesucht, nur mit Karvza. Also es ist umgegangen, Woche nach Woche. Es ist gegangen, jede Woche gegangen, nach Riede Water, in der Rebbetzin Serie gekommen, der Ruf war gesucht, nur mit Karvza. Es ist gekommen, als ja Matze, der Buch ist schon gewesen, als Kuhne von der Yeshiva. In bei Ruf hat ein bisschen rausnehmen von Yeshiva, hat er angenehm zu sich in Stieb. Der Rebbetzin Water geriefen jede Woche. Was macht man Bucher? Ich gehe selber schmissen mit dem Ruf. Der Ruf hat gesagt, nur mit Karvza. Bei Ruf schon gewöhnt zu mischt, was er geht davor. Einmal hat das Ruf gesagt, so schmissen mit dem Reben. Hat den Reben gesagt, lass mich dir sagen eine Sache. Die alle Mimrem Leute Sof ka Sof kommen sie zurück. Verwus, da in dem Haus hat gut nicht zu verkaufen. Sie probieren, sie lernen sich auf einem schweren Weg, als sie gut nicht durchzutreffen dort. Wo ist das Problem? Also auf dem Weg, auf Arup, verhacken sie sich den Weg auf zurück. Es macht sich schwer, sonst können zurückkommen. Ins darf man sehen, als in so einem Schum kein Jad in dem, als Weg auf zurück soll werden verhackt. Ani baum, die ist im Rose gekommen, da hat mir angestellt, dass ich also darf ein Deal mit der Sache, was 7 Jahre zurück, probiert zu laufen, es ist nicht keine Organisation, da muss probiert zu laufen, alle Rebunen, es war gewiss, dass er Neusig in dem Neusse. Zwischen den Jiden, wenn wir noch zu dem Jeder bestimmen. Was ich kann Neid sagen, getroffen dem Jid, a Yerashima im Araben, am Musen, a Dorch getrachter, in het stark von Expertise, von Ausheeren, zehnliche Cases und solche Kinder, hat er sich weggestellt am Mahalig. Ist der bestimmt hat gebringt Achidisch zum Tisch, als wo ist die Yesod, wo es trabt, die alle Kinder runterzukommen zusammen, ich sage. In einmal hat er ausgehabt, dem Yesod, ist kommt Achidisch, an das, was alle ehrliche Jiden, zum wir uns geschmissen haben, sich können suchen, an der Weg ist, mit Karf zusammen die Kinder, ist das, es ist gut der Revier von der Sache. In der bestimmt noch das Schie gehabt, als Sachzadikim haben auf ihm, haben so immer Juda gewesen Urlaub. Sie gehen einmal, als Tosche Rebbe sich können, hat er geriefen, hat da etliche Sache Cases, wo es sich ausschmissen, Tosche Rebbe sich können, hat er geriefen, der Bestimmen, er dann bei ihm, hat bezahlt Geld, also kommen, er ist gesessen bei ihm einmal, noch eine zweite Mal, durchgegangen mit ihm. Und er hat ihm gefragt, Jufa Danti, Jufa Gejafti, der Biochene Bosner von Square, habe ich mitgehalten, und er hat sich Sachen übergeschmissen mit ihm. Square in Montreal. Auch der Interesse ist, als wenn man kennt, damit sie ist, man weiß, also jede Sache, jeder Mörder weiß doch, als sie keine Pass nach Schale, darf man kennen, damit sie ist. Einmal man kennt, damit sie ist, weiß man, wie sie sich hinzugehen, mit alle Schale, das kommen dagegen. Wenn man rufen, du bestimmt in zurücklegen, wo es seine Expertise gebringt mit sich. Man hat gebeten, so ungefähr neu, du Träumen zu sein, ist du rauszugehen auf beide Seiten von dem Saal. Not bestimmt.
Rishus Harbonim Dayanim. Friedrich Redner mentioned Dayan Vosner, Shlita in Montreal. One time he invited me to speak. It was actually the very first time I ever spoke a shir, I think it was on Chinuch, I believe, in front of a Chassidish Eilam. It's the first time. I understand Yiddish quite well. And a few words, obviously, I can speak, but I can't express myself deeply in Yiddish, in a foreign tongue. I can't do it. So he gave me rishus to speak in English. And I spoke in English. It was the first time. About 30 minutes into this drasha, I realized I was having a panic attack. My nervous system was going off. And I realized why. And I turned, Dayan Vosner was sitting next to me, and I turned and I said, Dayan, am I upsetting the Olam? Are they upset with me? He said, no. I said, is it okay what I'm saying? He said, yes, gewaldig. I said, so why does everyone look upset? He started laughing and he told in Yiddish to the Olam what I just said. The truth was, my English was a little too heich for the Olam, and they were concentrating very stark on what I was saying. And to me, it looked like they were all upset with me. Versteht sich, the Olam burst out laughing when he explained what I was feeling, and I felt a lot more comfortable. So I'm okay if I get the, I realize it's concentration. I would like to say the following, just as introduction, that on this Indian of English, we have a difficult sugya, a complicated sugya that I've worked on for years and years and years, and constantly refining my own havana in the sugya. But it's complicated, and it's possible that as I express it, some of the language won't be clear. Please, if there's a lack of havana, please just wave and we will work it out. We'll make sure someone translates. It's too important. It's too important for misunderstanding. Rav Shach, Zaytzal Livrocha, once told me, when it comes to anything nageya la'alocha la'maisa, sofa hamuduberes. It has to be in a language that's understood. So if there's a misunderstanding, please feel free. If you have kashas on the whole sugya, that we can wait for afterwards. That we'll deal with at the end, and I'll leave space for kashas and questions and that kind of. But if it's havon of the etzem dvarim that I'm trying to be masbir, please interrupt, wave, and we'll have Shlomi will explain. Someone will explain to me what was said and what I misunderstood, and we'll work it out. In truth, I just want to mention this. I have tremendous hakos hatayv to Meir Rebbe Tzitzal Matzio Solomon Zechzal Livrocha. I miss him terribly. When I lived in Lakewood, before I made move to Eretz Yisrael, every Shabbos Mavarchen for 13 years, I picked him up at his house and we walked to shul. I arranged a drasha he should give in the alumni minyan in Lakewood where I davened. And I picked him up and we walked together. Baruch Hashem, he walked slowly, which was a schus for me. And then we walked back after the drasha, we made Kiddush. And it was during those 13 years in the Gas, when we were walking and talking, that we took on the sugya, this whole sugya of, really he developed and helped me, challenged me very much to refine what I was thinking, that it should be consistent in the pan of halacha, it should fit. And in our hashkafas, it should fit. I mean, it wasn't that I was off, but he was very makpid. Mashgiach was exceedingly makpid that we should work it through together. 13 years I spent kimat every Shabbos Mavarchen walking with him. This is aside from the stuff in the office, with the shailas, but I'm saying we've spent a lot of time working on this, and I'm always open-minded for development, refinement, and clarification. I'm always open-minded. I think, am I correct? If you watch the drashas even from a few years ago, am I correct? It comes out more clarity, right? The Vaita? I hope it's that way. A yid that's not steiging is a big problem. I hope that I'm not saying the same drasha. So if you see a stira from something I said last year or the year before, that's good, not bad. Take this one and drop that one. Because it's a complicated sugya. What I want to do today is to build a binyan from the bottom up. It will be the greatest nachas for me, what I've experienced time and time again through the years, is that when you build carefully the binyan from the bottom up, it explains two things. Number one, there's a klora havana in what happened to these children. Why are they going through what they're going through? Nice Zisa Kinder start off in this world, and they all were, and suddenly, later on in life, they're, connected, and they don't keep Torah, and they put on tattoos, and who knows what. Why? How? We have to understand how did it happen. That's number one. And my experience is that when we understand how it happened, I will be masbir what it is we do to reverse will make so much common sense. It's pashut. It's so simple. Once you see what went wrong, to how, it's not complicated. That's the crazy thing. It's very, very straightforward, but it depends on building the binyan from the bottom to understand what went wrong inside these poor children so that we can then help them find their way back, what can I say? The feedback we get from the people who've come to Kesher Nafshi over the years is absolutely amazing. I was also, by the way, the director for 10 years of a makom in Brooklyn called Our Place, a drop-in center for kids who are off the derech. We had about 450 kids in the program each year, a boys program, a girls program, and there was even a mixed program. I got reshus from the Rabbanim to run one program for kids, older kids, who anyway were mixing with each other because they wouldn't come otherwise. And we found that the kids who stayed with us for 3 years, they were totally fry coming in. 3 years later, 97% of them were Shomer Torah mitzvahs again, 3 years later. These are facts. There's a mahalach here. There's a science to it. There's a havana to it that makes sense both in Torah, it makes sense in the science, you understand, the developmental science of how the brain works and the nervous system. It all fits together, and it will be my greatest nachas at the end, if there are no shailas to ask me, because the whole sugya is so pashut. Do you understand what I'm glad to answer shailas, don't get me wrong, but my tachlis is this, and I can tell you that in the world, I get every single day emails and messages and texts and voice notes begging me, can you refer me to a Rav who understands this? I need chizuk, I need support. Because a Rav, when I was in Lakewood, I want you to understand, I took my clients to Ramat Yisrael, I took them to him. And there was a piece a Rav can give who understands this that makes the whole nafka min in the sugya. I'll be honest. The entire nafka mina in the sugya, my experience was when I had an Adam Chashuv, a genuine Talmud Chacham, someone who represents the Torah world, who understood the sugya and could hold the hand of a parent. What that gives, it gives the strength to a parent to be able to work the sugya through. Without it, I must tell you, it's very, very schwer for most parents. Almost every parent are begging me all over the world, who are the Rabbanim? Give me a list of names. And we've been very troubled by the fact that we've not had enough names in all cases. This is a nachas you can't imagine. This is something that halavai, every kehillah and every community would do this and care enough to do this. So I'm very touched by this. This is moyerdik. And again, I want to be very clear. My goal is to make it so clear It's poshut. There's no shilas. I see very clearly what I have to do. It's just, that's my goal. And let's see if we can get that clear. So I'm going to start by building a binyan. How do we build a binyan? The sugya of off the derech. Because, and one last hakdom, I'm sorry. Years ago, there was a magazine, Jewish Observer. It was before all the other Yiddish magazine, and the Agudas Yisrael put out this Jewish Observer in English, and it was the only English journal at that time, the Torah journal. And they had I think this is the early 90s, and they had an article there about why kids are going off the derech. And a very respectable mechanech wrote, they had a little box where they brought it out to make sure everyone understood the point, that the reason children are going off the derech is because they're coming from dysfunctional homes. This is the problem. And I wrote, I was a very quiet person before that, I just did my work, but I was so offended. I was offended on two reasons. Number one, it wasn't true. I myself at that time had a daughter off the derech. And we were not a dysfunctional home, we were a very healthy home. We were totally shocked by what happened. Our home was running just fine. It was a Torah home, there was shalom bayis, there was caring for children. It just made no sense. So I knew firsthand it wasn't true. But what was worse is when we allow azam musag to be in the gas, that it's dysfunctional homes, well then we're not understanding what it really is, so we won't help the kids. And worse, we'll be mazik more children. Because when in the gas a parent feels, to stand up today, we've made it more comfortable to stand up and acknowledge, I have a kid off the derech, I'm struggling. It's become a little more acceptable, Baruch Hashem, to acknowledge it and then seek help. We're in a different matzah. But then it was very embarrassing. And when a parent believes that the gas halt, that the reason my kid went off the derech is because we're a dysfunctional home, that means every time the kid walks out the house, there's a war inside that house to try and prevent them walking out, dressed the way they are, acting the way they are, and that makes their problems worse. That drives them into a skonas nefashos. So nishno that it's not emes, and therefore prevents us from really handling with what is it then? But it's mazik children eichet. It's mazik directly. Now, I will say this. Many Rabbanim come to me and say, well, yeah, but I worked with many families. I see they're very dysfunctional. So the question is, what came first? Allowing a family to conduct themselves in their home in certain ways that aliba to the emes of how we would wish our families would run, that would be a dysfunction. But allowing your home to function actually is highly functional. That's a chashava thing. That's not a dysfunctional home. That's actually a chashava home that chapt, that I need to allow a little dysfunction, some flexibility in my shtub to save my child's life, is highly functional. You understand? So all this developed as a mahalach for us to try and help parents, and these drushes go worldwide, and the feedback we get constantly is people are mishtoimim, how it changes their lives. Literally, changes their lives, their shtub. And I'll tell you something else that's amazing, amazing, amazing. I think those who are here, who have been through Keshenashi, we maskim, that it enriches your own shtub in ruchnias. This is the amazing thing. To do this properly, this mahalach, it actually strengthens your own yahadus, your own relationship to Kudsha Brichu. It takes us who've been through it to a place that I believe we could not have got had we not gone through it. So, Nishno, we're saving our kids. But we're enriching our own lives in Ruchnias. This is the amazing thing. And when a Rav holds the hand of a parent and shows them that, and is mechazik them with that, then you're not going outside. You're not, this is Ratzon HaBorah. You're given a gift here. It's going to take you all to a chashva place in Ruchnias. When a Rav sees that and brings them there, it's incredible what happens in this shtub. Unbelievable what can happen. Nisim, nisim. So let's build the sugya from the bottom up. I'm going to start with this. I'm going to break it down like this. I'm going to start with what is normal, what should, ideal, what is the lamdus of ideal chinuch? What does it look like? Chinuch doesn't mean, I don't mean, I mean bringing up children, parenting, bringing up kids. What is there? Most of us don't think about it, we just do it. If you came from a shtub that taught you, it's in your DNA, you just bring up kids, and there's a natural, nice way to do it. But I want to break it down, what that actually is. The natural thing that people who come from beautiful homes, with soidus of chinuch in their blood, what is it they're doing? It's important to understand, for our purposes, what that is. Because it's through that we can begin to understand how they went off. What happened to these poor kids. So, normative chinuch is like this. There's a mitzvah in the Torah, alaveis and pira virivya. We should bring children in the world. The chinuch is right away, says, the Mishorsha mitzvah immediately points out that there's another mitzvah included in this, l'sheves yitzara. The Eibishter will, Pasuk in Yeshayahu, Yudches, the Eibishter will that we should fill the world with people to bring Kudsha Brichel, the Shmosha Kadosh Baruch Hu to the world. This is a mitzvah, l'sheves yitzara. We should bring healthy people. I don't want to go into the lomdus now, there's not time for it, but there's kamarayas, Taisus Menachas, there's a few rayas that this l'sheves yitzara is to bring healthy people who can build Klal Yisrael, who can be part of a yishuv and live a healthy life in a good way. The way I define it is in betziruf with the mitzvah koleles of avtarecha kamecha, with those tziruf together, means that we're meant to bring up a child who's healthy in body and mind, who's healthy, gesund, who's capable of self-love, loving themselves, and capable of avtarecha kamecha, of loving others. This is the mitzvah l'sheves yitzara. This will the Eibishter, we should fill the world with a zaz sod mention, who can bring the Shem of Hashem into the world. This is what the Eibishter will. This is the mitzvah l'sheves yitzara. It's the chelik or hemshech or pirurivya. This is what we're meant to be doing. And I think most people intuitively understand that. No one sets out to bring up a meshugana. We all try to bring up healthy kids. That's what we want to do. And intuitively, this is really what we're doing. Healthy in body and mind, capable of self-love and capable of loving others. This nakuda, the reason I'm saying it klor, is because I'm going to borrow from this. At the end of this sugya, we're going to come back to this and understand how we're going to bring these kids back. This nakuda is not just a vort, but it's a principle on which we're going to see this sugya emerge later on. So we'll bear that in mind. That's the mitzvah. Another way of looking at this same concept of chinuch, I'll give you three. I'm going to give three. The second one is this, that there are three distinct, again, mention who are healthy and gesund and had good mesiras from their babas and their zaydas, and it came down the right way. Do all this naturally. It's all natural. But I'm going to break it down so we can use it later. There are nikudas in it that we need. There's another way of looking at it. There are three distinct stages on which we're bringing up children. The first stage is sort of 0 to 2, more or less. And 0 to 2 should be unconditional love. Unconditional love. That means the kid should feel, the child should feel, it doesn't matter what they do, they should feel loved. That means when, for example, they wake you up in the middle of the night and you know you have to go and give shir tomorrow morning and you're exhausted anyway because you stayed up late preparing, and then 2, 3 o'clock in the morning the baby woke you and the wife isn't feeling well and you got to get up and you got to take care of the baby and the mice of the baby's colicky and you got to, play with the baby and you're exhausted. There's a huge nafka mina when you're holding that baby and you're, trying to calm it, to make it comfortable, make it feel, beruhig, the baby, if the way you're doing it communicates to the child, I love you, I'm here for you. That means we do it gently, we do it lovingly. There's a huge nafkamina if we ourselves are frustrated, tired, upset, and basically we're going like this, and then begging the wife, please, no, come, shine. And we go, and the baby's nervous system is picking up that you're upset with it. Now, they don't understand that consciously, cognitively, of course not. There's no Havana of that, but there is a very deep programming into the nervous system of I'm disappointed with you. I'm upset with you. You're interfering in my life. Who are in with a million other things that happen that a child, I had a lady one time told me they went to a chasna, they had the baby, they're in the gown and everything to go to a relative's chasna, and they had the baby on their lap. They get out the car when they arrived, and the baby had made through its diapers, through its dust, and this poor lady was covered with, whatever, it wasn't geschmack. I told them, that's forgive me, it sounds crazy, it's actually a wonderful opportunity, believe it or not, to connect with the baby and avoid the baby feeling I'm not loved. In other words, holding it, laughing about it. It takes a madrega, it's a madrega nuchnius to do such a thing. But to love the baby through it and not be, I told you, and everyone's blaming everyone else. How can I go? And there's koilis and brakim. The child picks all that up. If you're feeding the baby in the morning and you're running out to work and you're feeding Cheerios and milk, and then someone calls you over there as you're feeding, and you look around, and in that moment they throw the bowl of Cheerios and milk on your head and your whole clothing is covered with it, and you got to run off to davening or to dasa to work. People get mad. Why are you calling me? You distract me. These koilis and brakim are actually beginning to dysfunction, to take away from the child, because this innocent kid is 0 to 2. They don't know what they're doing. They're just children. They're babies. They're just babies. What we need to do, 0 to 2, is regardless of what they do, we love them back. We're calm with them. We're sensitive to them. It doesn't matter what they do. If they take a red marker and they come into your freshly painted dining room and they do their artwork all over the wall, you take the camera out and you take pictures standing next to it. It's good for the Sheva Brachas, trust me. It's very good for the Sheva Brachas. One day you'll bring out that picture. But I'll tell you something, it's amazing for the child. I'm not saying we should leave red magic markers out so they can do it. We should put away the markers. And not only that, if they're old enough, we could tell them, das ist nicht a gute Sache, But we talk to them in a way where they embrace our chinuch with unconditional love. Ki'ilu, we're saying to them, it doesn't matter what you do. There is nothing you can do that will stop me loving you. My liebschaft for you is permanent, it's secure, and you can run out. Now, why is this important? Again, healthy parents from healthy dairies do all this naturally. It's pasha. This is dava pasha. I'm breaking it down so we can use it. Why is this important? Because stage 2 starts around age 2, goes till around age, I don't know today how long we can get away with it at all. Once upon a time, I said 2 to 16, that's long gone. 2 to 14, maybe 2 to bar mitzvah, the second stage. Probably around bar mitzvah we can get away with it. Because stage 2 is about setting limits. Gvulot. We put rules on our children. Because around 2, they go out and explore the world, and they begin to do things which we need to protect them. There are things they do that are dangerous, like touching a pot on a stove or walking in a street. And we have an achrayus as parents to make gvulot, to make rules, boundaries for a child. And what we're actually doing mostly from 2 to around 13 is saying no shefela, no. We're stopping the kids or making them do things they don't want to do. This is our story. Tuta around Bar Mitzvah is most of parenting is either encouraging our kids to do things they really don't want to do, like brushing their teeth or going to bed, or not reading this book, or, everyone knows in their own family, this is like Yedua, this is universal. We're busy telling them to try and get them to do things they should be doing that they don't want to do really, or stop them doing things they want to do that we don't want them to do. So 2 to 13 is essentially about machin gvulot, making rules to restrict them. So if you built your chinuch, you were successful to build your chinuch 0 to 2 on the asidus of unconditional love. It doesn't matter what you do, I love you. Then when we set gvulot, when we set the rules, the boundaries, the child experiences, I'm saying here, not, it's not a conscious thought, they're not there yet, with their brains aren't developed yet, but their nervous system, the panemius, is margish, this setting rules and boundaries as a hemshech of the unconditional love. It's consistent. It must be my father loves me, and that's why he's pulling me away from the street, or making me go to bed on time, or getting me to chaza my chomish or my siddur, because he cares about me. And versteht sich, if we're smart enough to always do the setting, the boundaries and the rules, ideally in a very firm, confident way, halavai, with a smile. Halavai, we drop in this door all the mirsas gone for this generation, and we do it with a smile, but with firm, clear rules. This is the way it's meant to be. But we don't have to scare them into it. We just have to love them into it, so to speak, but not back off. These are the rules. This is what's right and wrong. And we do it with a smile. Then they experience it. If we did the 0 to 2 properly, there's a hemshech internally of how they experienced it. And it's vital love, and it's niskabel. You made like a kli for them to experience this. See, all children, I used to say, they all need rules, structure, and discipline. All kids. Without rules, structure, and discipline, there's no chinuch. It's hefkerus. It's shreklach. I changed it. One of my daughters pointed it out to me. It's really structure, rules, and discipline. Das meant as structure is what we're meant to be doing. Our kids, aya pere odom yevalid, right? They're born, they're not structured. They don't know, and they can do things like walking in a street, chas v'shalom, or touching a pot on a stove. There's many things they can do that are dangerous. Touching a knife, playing with a knife. So we don't give them knives when they're little at the table. Pasha common sense. We create structure that we believe is ideal for them to steig in this world and achieve the mitzvah, the Shevis Yitzhara, to be a healthy, happy person. So we create that structure. How do we communicate structure to children? Because you can't sit down for the 3-year-old and give them the philosophy of structure and why this is important to your life. They won't know what you're talking about. In fact, no kids will. So we communicate structure through a system of rules. Every shtub has its system of rules. And we give rules about bedtime rules and brushing your teeth rules, picking up your clothes off the floor rules. We create rules. And we communicate all these rules to our children. And in other words, we don't talk about structure, but we do talk about, the rules. We don't use the word rules either, but, this is what you have to do. We create that set of rules. The problem is, we ourselves don't actually keep the rules. We regularly walk away from them. For example, if let's say bedtime is 7 o'clock in your shtub, all the kids go to sleep 7 o'clock. That's true, except when you got a very chosh of a phone call from a chosh of a yid that you've been waiting for this call, and you get on the phone at 7 o'clock. Suddenly bedtime is 7:10 or 7:15. You get off the phone. Bedtime. So what the kids pick up is that 7 o'clock isn't actually 7 o'clock. And the truth is, in real life, no one. I don't even think. I'm certain it's not healthy to be a zayeka, that every single rule for the rest of your life has to be exactly as you said, is meshuga, You'll make yourself meshuggah and the kids meshuggah. So we're flexible with the rules. A child's internal relationship to that is, oh, these aren't rules, they are rules. So how does a child know if the rules are real or not? How would they know? The only way they know is to push back. And they push back against the rules and test the rules. We give consequences, discipline, whatever it is. And through the discipline, they learn the chashivas of the rule. I found that once, the Sob Shosh Avodah says amazing thing. I saw inside, he says, the Zohar Kodesh gives shrekelcha einshim for different, isurim and things, brings down, mamish kiyadu, I don't go into it, but shrekelcha einshim. Frank the Sob Shosh Avodah says, how's that possible when you don't take into account an individual's mitzvahs and averas? There's a cheshbon. It can't be that the same einish is on every person because it's not taking into account the shinuyim in this mentions mitzvahs, Torah mitzvahs, and that mentions Torah mitzvahs. So how's that possible? This is a shaila. And he answers that it's really litem musagim of the chashivas of the chet. That we should understand the chashivas, so the Zohar gives these einshim, but in practice, it can't be, because it doesn't take in the variables of who the person is. It doesn't make sense. It can't be just simple. So too with our children, in order to convey to the children the chashivas of the rules, we do discipline or consequences. Right? I hate to call it punishment, because in this generation that doesn't work very well. But consequences, some sort of consequence in Einshim for whatever is very, very appropriate. Why? Not to give mirsus, not just that, because it tells the child the chashivas of the rule, and the purpose of the rule was to create structure. In other words, Lu Yitzuya, they would all do the structure properly. You wouldn't need rules and discipline. There's absolutely no tachlis in it whatsoever. No purpose at all. The whole purpose is only to reinforce the rules. So the second level of development, of childhood development, is where we make these rules for our children, we control them. We try to discipline them to get them to do things they shouldn't do, stop them doing things they shouldn't do, and get them to do things they do. And if we did the 0 to 2 beautifully, and they felt unconditionally loved, then more or less, this plays forward into their lives where they experience life in this way. And they experience, it must be my tati loves me, internally. And therefore they stell zu. Oibes nicht, and they didn't get the 0 to 2, you can understand that they start pushing back when they get the rules, is you hate me. In fact, it's very interesting. Parents call me all the time in this generation. They say, what do I do? My child said, I hate me. Then my child told me, I hate you, tati. I want to kill you. They get crazy. That's not uncommon in this generation, especially where the 0 to 2 wasn't there fully. So when they experience the rules, they think you're just trying to hurt them. But ideally, it flows through. Unconditional love, 2 to 13, bar mitzvah, bas mitzvah, is limit setting. Lu Yitzuya, that works out well. Then, after bar mitzvah, up until the chasna, they come to us for guidance, for hadracha. They come to us. They look to us to guide them about their choices in this world. Choices, obviously of yeshivas, schools, and clothing even, and certainly of shidduchim. They learn, they trust us. It's a binyan that was built for them based on unconditional love. That whatever they do, you just laugh, smile, take pictures, and make them feel loved. It doesn't make a drop of difference. Then built on limit setting, built on that, they turn to us for guidance. That's how it's ideally going to work. I've got a third mahalach. And all this is going to be nageya. Again, I want to remind both sides to understand it's nageya, and when it doesn't work, how we get them back. You'll see it all ties back in. So the third thing is this. There's a word in English, in the world of psychology, that was really created and developed by a British psychologist in the 60s. His name is Bowlby. And this word is attachment. Attachment. Now, about 8 years ago, actually, Gedali, you should know, it was when I came to the very first Kesher Nafshi conference. and they asked me to come and speak. And I sat in my home in Eretz Yisrael thinking, what should I tell them? What do I think is to me, a drasha should be built not on what I know, but on what the people want to hear. It should be like attuned to what they need. So I was thinking, what do they need? And I made a conscious decision to come and talk about attachment. And if I remember correctly, it was a game changer. What does attachment mean? So I'm not going to go into the lomdas of attachment, of bad attachments. I just want to develop good attachment. Attachment means attachment. Actually, kesha nafshi, nafshu kshura b'nafshay, right? The Balaturim, right? Kadei lachancha. We know the Balaturim by Yosef Atzadik. What he says, the nafshu kshura b'nafshay, so the Balaturim, the second pshat is the person needs nafshu kshura b'leiv ha'ish. You need to be nafshu kshura kadei lachancha. That's attachment. That is attachment. Bowlby wasn't mechadish it, he just exposed it and found a word in the world for it. I think the Balaturim was mechadish it. Attachment means there's a connection of love and acceptance, a relationship with a child where they feel truly cared for. And it's expressed, one of the models I use to help parents understand it, which is so crucial to understand, it's a simple model, is something I refer to, I borrowed it from a certain psychologist, Chachma B'Goyim Tamin, so I found a certain Nakuda. He, Grada says it almost agav. To me, I built binyanim on this agav statement of his. And this is what we call the 4 S's. S in English. S, 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 and F. And they are 4 words. Safe, secure, seen. The last one is soothed, beruhigt, soothed. Safe, secure, seen, and soothed. Soothed, beruhigt is good, more or less, yeah? Is there a better word? Beruhigt, right? Safe, secure, safe. What does safe mean? Safe means we as parents are meant to provide an environment of safety for our children. Physical safety is partial. We should create a safe environment. They should feel safe in this world, but also safe emotionally, psychologically safe, that we don't scream at them and yell at them and hit them and hurt them. Safe that they shouldn't be hurt. They shouldn't, you understand, in all the different ways of abuse, they shouldn't be abused. We should make sure they're safe and do our best to protect them so they have a safe life. Safety goes into many, many different dimensions. Physical safety, emotional safety, psychological safety, inyonim with the Pegia and Midasei Yesod, those inyonim, they should be safe. And spiritually, ruchnius-wise, and all these areas, all 5 of these areas are crucial for a child to feel safe. A child to go to shul, for example, with a father who's nebuch, embarrassed about his son who's not davening, because there's always on every bench in every Beis Medrash, on the table in front, there's always a father with a 5-year-old who davens as Avi Atzadik. There's always one out there, and this father's all embarrassed because my son is just playing the whole time, doesn't even look in the siddur, and mooching and driving him crazy. That's not safety. That's not creating safety in a child's life. It's not safe for him to go to Beis Medrash. And there's many, many children like this who end up in life. They're actually reactive to go to our Beis Medrash. We'll come more to that a little later. So safety applies in all 5 of these dimensions. Emotional, psychological. I was by Reb Chaim Kanievsky, Zechzad Rocha, one time discussing these in Yonim. He was fascinated by the difference between emotional abuse and psychological abuse. The safety, emotional safety and psychological, we had a whole sichsuch to explain. He wanted to understand what it was when I said it. It's typically chap that nakuda and put me on the spot, and I had to explain. But there's a huge difference, emotional and psychological. Emotional is what I experience and feel. That's emotional safety. Psychological safety is, unfortunately, I don't even know it's happening to me. I don't even realize that I'm being programmed for failure inside. It's deep inside me. Like telling a child, nothing's going to come of you. nebuch. You know, if you don't learn, nothing's going to come of you. You think you're ever going to do a shidduch if you behave like that? That's psychological abuse. Mamish psychological abuse. So all these, this is all said. First one is safe. Secure means a child has to feel secure with their parents, with the shtub, that their parents care for each other and respect each other, that they're not going to get divorced. They're safe. There's a security of life. There's a security at the table that they can come to a table and be secure. They're not going to be embarrassed if they don't remember the name of the week's parsha. You come with the parsha sheets, and this one doesn't remember and wasn't listening and is all. We have to create safety. Matzio, by the way, was very much against doing the parsha sheets at the table. He spoke about it many times. He said, do the parsha sheets individually with each child during Shabbos. You'll find the place. What we did is always the youngest. We only did the youngest. The youngest knows everything, and they can keep going for hours and hours. The youngest child always, they can darshan and darshan. And anyone else wants to add in, by all means. Otherwise, we learnt the parsha sheets with them privately later, not the table, because you don't want to make it a place where they're insecure to come to the table, because I'm going to be exposed, I don't remember anything, or I don't know anything, I don't know the answers. You can't do that. The security of knowing you get the right clothes in the right season, summer clothes and winter clothes. And if there's going to be camp, they'll go to camp, whatever it is. We're going to have, find, not that everything is like scary. I don't know if we have the money. Don't bother me. You understand? We have to make sure that children feel secure that we as parents are going to take care of them. Don't worry. Everything's going to be taken care of. How? I don't know today. I'll tell you tomorrow. But trust me, we're going to take care of it. Mommy and I will work it out. That's security. Seen is probably the most chashuv of all of them, because seen is really, really, I believe, the deep yesod behind chaneichna pidakai. Chaneichna pidakai, das meant dakai. We have to know who he is. Who is he? Who is this child? We have to watch. This idealized parenting, again, is that we observe our children, we watch our children, we think about and see, because they're different. You'll see, they all look like a group, right? We parent the kids. Get the kids in the car, get the kids in the bath, get the kids. It's like the kids. There's this Chaim Megalim called kids. It's not like that. Each one, and you see as they grow up, they all go different directions. If you see a family where the youngest is 20, the oldest is 40 or 50, they're different shtubs. Of course, they're similar, but there's a flavor that's different. They brought themselves out differently. That's on us. That's on us to see that and reflect it back to them. I took on myself when I saw what was happening the Friday night. During the week, I give my kids a bracha Friday night, and I took upon myself, when my children were growing up, to watch during the week for something I could whisper in their ear and say to them when I give them a bracha, I noticed this about you. It was very special. They need to be seen for their strengths and their weaknesses in a nice way that we can see their weaknesses too and help them, deal with their weaknesses. But they need to be seen by us. They're not just a kid, one of the kids. Very, very, very chashuv. There are so many children who wander around, and literally they report, when they come to therapy, they report that they don't feel seen. They don't feel, my parents know me at all. They don't know who I am. Was macht die Idee ja? Okay, komm. Seen. So that's the third of that we have a chayv kadosh to see them, but it's not just to see them, it's that we reflect back to them, we take the time, and it doesn't have to be an obsessive thing, but that we notice as they develop who they are, what their uniqueness. Some have strengths in even in learning. A child can have a strength in pilpul, another could have a strength in halacha, another could have a strength in midrashim, and sipurim maisim, and people are different, and it's so chashuv that we see them, and they know that we saw them. We have to reflect it back to them. I believe that is, by the way, the heart, the yesod behind chaneichna pidakai, is we have to know who is he? I had one time I had a big fight in my office with a very surprising, very, very surprising, but I don't want to, be malsham on any, but this mensch came in, a chashva mensch, and he was fighting with me about his Messiah. It has to be his Messiah with his kid, and he couldn't let it go. And this child was different. I knew the child. He was different. It wasn't off the derech, not at all. He just imagine someone in a certain, in Pilpul is their thing, and he's in halacha, and his father couldn't accept it. It was really amazing. And at the end of one session, I said to him, what's with Aneichna Pidaka? And he said to me, it was the most amazing thing. He was so lost. This father was so lost. Sagt mir, nein, the Vav of Daka geht auf den Tata. He said to me, it was this crazy, I looked at him, and then he got up and walked out. His wife, poor wife, was sitting there. She looked at me and said, what am I meant to do? She begged me not to give up. You should know, I fought with this man for 6 months. I called him up. He wouldn't come. But I fought with him. I called him regularly. I said, Mr. Mashugana, that doesn't make sense. It doesn't fit. Anyway, I got him. He eventually saw it, and he understood. He was just lost. He was lost in a very, very heavy Messiah that he got lost. And he came back, and it was very interesting. You can get that lost, but he was lost. The last one is soothed. Soothed, baroig. That means like this. Children will inevitably go through hurts and pains in their childhood. Many of these hurts and pains appear to us to be self-inflicted. It's like, I told you not to do it. They get them so they go for they can't wait with the bicycle that someone should take off the training wheels. And then one day they just work it out they take them off, and of course they fall off and break their finger, and you got to take them, they fracture the finger, you got to take them to the hospital. What you don't do is yell at your kid, Mr. Mashugana, you took off and I told you not to take him off, and why did you take it off? And give a drasha, and the whole journey to the hospital is yelling and screaming, and they wasted my time. No. You take him to hospital and you feel bad for him that his finger broke. You want to have that drasha about the wheels, which you should. That's for tomorrow. That's for 2 days from now. But right now he needs caring. If a kid hurts themselves, even if we warned them not to do something, and they did it anyway, and they hurt themselves, the first thing we're meant to do is put them on your lap and hold them and beruhig them. That's what we're meant to do. When not blast them, and it's a chinuch moment, right? Explain, right? The poor kid's crying his head off, and now I'm going to give you a drush. We get the stender and explain to you, say this chinuch, what you did wrong. No. You put them on your lap, and you shmeichel, and you beruhig them, and you soothe them. When you do all these 4 things together, safe, secure, seen, and soothed, you create something I refer to, which I took again, it's not my chiddush, but I live with this in the yesodus of what we're doing here with children in crisis. You create something referred to as attachment, connection, nafsho kshura b'nafsho. Attachment. You attach. That means your child feels connected to you in a way where it's unnatural for them to want anything other than following your Messiah and being close to you. You create attachment in a way where it's completely natural. They want to come and sit in your sukkah, and not the chas, they want to bring their children to your sukkah, to the Zayda and Baba. They want, their nachas is with you. It's tied up together with the Eldarin because they experience the safe, secure, seen and sooth. You understand? You create attachment. And what we realize with all these kids who are going off is they have broken attachment. Broken attachment. Now I want to say something very clear. Very often, these 3 examples I gave, Shevis Sitzara, the 3 levels of unconditional love, limit setting and guidance, and the 4 S's, these are the ideals of how gesunte people, without thinking about it, bring up children. More or less, this is how More or less, we all try our best to bring up children. And this is where we begin to get the first mafteach to understand the sugya of the derech, which will then lead us, like I said, to understanding what we need to do to help them. This is the first mafteach, shkoich. The first mafteach is this. What I described till now, I doubt that anyone does perfectly. It's very unlikely to me that anyone naturally, perfectly does this. What we do, intelligent, thoughtful people, is what I've described is what we all do more or less. More or less, this is what we're doing. No one does it perfectly. You know, when we put out the book, Raising a Loving Family, where I spoke about these inyanim, it was my hope that future generations, parents will give it to their children when they get married, and they should learn these yesodis and do it lechatchila. They'll have hadracha what to do right, how to do it right in the first place. Because this door needs a chinuch and a chizuk the previous doors didn't need, because the exposure is greater. It's pashut, it goes without saying. What we have all done is more or less good enough parenting. That means these ideas, those who are matzliach with their children, they did this. And I want to bevorn a kasha that people bring my way all the time, parents, and answer it with this. Because parents come to me frequently, they're just confused. When they first come into the sugya and their child goes off, they're extremely confused. The anfang of the sugya is obviously terrifying. It's terrifying to watch a child go off. Mamish terrifying. It's also incredibly shameful, because still people feel that, you know, the gas will look at it, that you must have done something wrong. And then comes from this their biggest kasha they all have. What's the biggest kasha? I know my shvaga, I know my sister-in-law, I know my neighbors. I hear kolis and brakim coming out of their house, and it never ends. What I hear going on over in that house, and no one went off. How is it possible that they line up all their kids, all bedecked beautifully, and they're all going to yeshiva and Beis Yaakov, and they're all doing whatever they're meant to do, and they're all doing it perfectly? I'm telling you, I know they scream at their kids, they're schlangen, they use feipetch, they're mamish, and their kids seem to be fine, and in unser Stub it all went crazy. How's that possible? This is the kasha they all ask. Because every one of them knows very, very personally and very well people, Chlor, Bodek, and Menusa did these years of parenting worse than them, and those people, their kids didn't go off, and mine did. This is the big kasha in the sugya. So I have a teretz. The teretz explains actually the whole sugya. The teretz is a word called trauma. Trauma. You see, more or less good enough parenting is more or less good enough for most kids if they don't experience trauma. But more or less good enough parenting, but tziruf with trauma, is not good enough. And just, Rosa, if you could just let that sink in deeply. The culprit alone is not trauma. It's more or less good enough parenting with trauma is the culprit. Theoretically, if we would, that's why I'm so passionate to teach wherever I go, to teach good attachment, healthy parenting. Why am I so passionate about it? Because in theory, if we did it perfectly, the chances are very high that even if trauma strikes, our children will be resilient. Resilient means they bounce back. They overcome it. It doesn't throw them off. If they had this healthiest attachment, they would come to us right away. They'd feel safe with us. They would tell us about it. We get them the help. And we see so many children. I wasn't careful to explain this early on enough, clearly enough. So I always had people at the end of a drasha, someone would call me up or come over to me and say, Reb Shimon, beautiful drasha, gavaldik, chedushim, lovely. And the man said, I have a big kasha on you. I said, what's the kasha? It was always the sign. I knew exactly the kasha. He said, I have to tell you the truth. I was traumatized. I went through trauma. I didn't go off. So how do you say trauma is the reason people go off? How does that make sense? I'm telling you, I didn't go off, and I was traumatized. Every drasha used to happen, until I became much clearer to say, so now if someone tells me that, I say, Ashrecha, whatever you got in your childhood gave you resilience. I don't know what it was, but somehow you had resilience. Resilience, the word means the ability to bounce back, the ability to get your life back again. But most people don't. And this is the chiddush, the first mafteach in the sugya, is to understand that the combination of more or less good enough parenting and trauma is not strong enough to help a child survive. It's not strong enough. It does not create resilience. And therefore, we can now say, what is the sugya of trauma that happens to these poor kids? But it's built on a sort of not perfect parenting that created the resilience. That's not the fault of parents, because in my experience, 99.9% of all parents, we all do more or less good enough parenting. The nafkamina is when trauma doesn't happen, you understand, so then it's fine and well. And they go to school and they dress right and they more or less do okay. But if trauma strikes, they can't. I want to explain the sugya of trauma. Let me explain first what the trauma is, typically, and then I'm going to explain how it impacts the child. Because then, from understanding how it impacts them, we can then understand what it is we need to do to help them get their lives back. Does that make sense? So that's the mahalach. So what is the trauma? So typically, the trauma with almost all the kids in our world, in the Torah world, the Yeshivish, Hasidish world, all the kids I've seen all the years, there are two basic yesodus of what the trauma is. I jokingly say that I hope that after I'm gone, someone will say, Omer Reb Shimon, Al Shnei Amudim, Chai Yaldeinu Oimed. And the Shnei Amudim are Hatznei Aleches V'Limud HaTorah. I want to be masbeh, because all these traumas basically fall in these two categories. Let's take Hatznei Aleches first. Hatznei Aleches is really not about clothing, it's also about clothing. Hatznei Aleches is about anhaga, about life, about how to live in an erlich way, in a humble way. If you're wealthy enough to buy a building for the Mossad, you don't ask the Mossad to please put on top 30 feet high neon signs in red flashing your name. That's not Hatznei Aleches. A little sign on the side of the building acknowledging to be mechazik other people to give is Hatznei Aleches. Hatznei Aleches is a broad way of life. It's hanhogas achayim. It's not just, but it's also about clothing. Now, one of the primary traumas that happen to our kids, and what we've noted with the off-the-derech world, if you look at the sugya of the kids, if we line them up, I've done the research time and time again with kids where I've gone and sat with them and check a checklist of what happened to work it out. So time and time again, I did it. There are two agencies in New York, Jewish Family Service and OHEL. They did it independently long after me. They did the research themselves. I didn't have the money they have, but it was the same numbers. And what it turns out is that 80% of all the off-the-derech children report having been nifka in the inyanim midasei yisod, in those inyanim. They were nifka. Someone touched them inappropriately. Someone played with them. Someone did something to them as a small child. And why is this so devastating? So, this is a whole, you understand, both I could have done. I once spoke in Gateshead on this. They asked me to speak. The drasha went 4 hours and 50 minutes on this subject. 4 hours and 50 minutes straight. It's a big subject, and this is not the time or place for it. But it is such a profound mazik, because nish nor the shame and embarrassment that happens, the hurt, the direct hurt, shame and embarrassment that happens to a child, that is actually not the biggest problem with it. That's bad. That's bad, but that's not the biggest problem. The biggest problem is that we, Baruch Hashem, live in a world, the yeshivische and the Hasidische world, and in fact your world, Hasidische world, is even more, much more, in Inyane Kedusha is the central, a central theme, am I right, in the Hasidische world. That's a yesod, that's a definition almost of what the yesod is of the Hasidische world, is Inyane Kedusha. Mufresh umuvdul. It's true of us, in the Olam HaTorah too, as much as we can. When a child's nifka, unfortunately, they've now been brought into a world that they don't belong in. See, ideally, I know in our world, and I imagine it's the same in the Chassidish world, right before the chasna, as late as possible, we introduce the child to the inyanim they need to know in order to be a married person. We do it as late as possible. That means like this, till the chasna, they're living in a bubble, a beautiful bubble called Hatznei Leches. In this bubble, we mechazik them in Inyane Kedusha. Shmir Sinayim, Shmir Saguf, with the Meidlech, covering their bodies properly. Even by men, dealing with your body in a healthy way, in a Kedushadik way. These are Inyanim and Yesodis that is part of our culture on such a deep level and is mechuzuk in every single Beis Sefer, every cheder, every Beis Yaakov, every school for girls. It's something that's chazed and chazed and chazed and given stories of mashalim and chizukim. It's really very much in the fabric of our chinuch. It's not just an inyan. This is the way to think about it. Inyan Tznius is not something we do. It's who we are. It's very different. These two amudim I'm going to talk about is both Hatznei Leches, Inyan Tznius, and Limud Torah are definitely not things we do. They're who we are. Do you understand? Nafka Mina is massive. So a child is nifka nebuch, and in our world, the numbers are shocking and frightening. Frightening, because the numbers turn out to be about 1 in 5 children have the experience of being nifka, and these inyanim, about 1 in 5. It's about 20% throughout our Torah world. So the numbers are huge. It is true, again, it's not for this drasha, that most of them squash it down, shove it down, and they go through, trying to turn it off somehow, only to discover that when they get married, it's very hard to turn it back on. The damage of what happened to them. Someone told me recently that one of the Bati Dinim in Lakewood, this last year, gave 52 gittin to young couples in 1 year. 52. Because they get married, and I'm positive that Rov Rubam of all of them are people who were nifka, shoved it down, got married, and just can't be misyaches to it. It's not repaired. They don't know how to bring it out. They don't know what to do. And so they get divorced because they're vayt from the sugya. Everyone's damaged. My point in saying this is that there's no such thing. Even the ones who are resilient, who seem to be resilient and they survive in the sugya, do you understand? They don't go off, which is the majority. The majority of children, nifkoim, don't go off. I hold that they can suffer worse in many ways. Their sorrows for lifetime is worse. Many of them, I get letters and emails from people who've heard me speak somewhere. They're in their 50s, telling me they've suffered their entire life and are still suffering. Is there hope? Is there help? I think they're much worse off, in my humble opinion. They have sabrach in their lives. For the others, they go off. Why? Because imagine, we have to put ourselves in the shoes of a child that was nifka, is hurt inside in this way, because what does it mean, nifka? For our purposes, abuse, this type of abuse, distorts normative development in these areas. They are now in the sugya. So a regular child is in this bubble, hatznei aleches, they're floating around beautiful, and they're keeping themselves with kedusha and taira and enjoying it with chizuk. That normal child, guess what happens before the chasna? That child, a chacham, or a wise kala teacher, they put into that bubble, the bubble of Hatznei Aleches, they expand the bubble now to include the inyanim that are nageya to be getting married. But it's in Hatznei Aleches. It's not outside. It's not the being, this hanhoga that produces children is something, bad. Adarabba. A wise person brings it beautifully into the sugya of Hatznei Aleches, and we strengthen, we support it. It's gewaldig. And we're all delighted when the person gets married and they get pregnant and they have a child. We're delighted. Parents are delighted. They cry from joy. They don't ask, how did that happen? Chas v'shalom, it's all part of Hatznei Aleches. It's beautiful. When a child's nifka, they're brought into the world of these inyanim, midas hayesod inyanim, in a bubble outside. They've got the Hatznei Aleches bubble. Their rebbes and teachers and parents are trying to reinforce, but they're in a different bubble. You can't turn it off. Once a child discovered their private parts in the context of being touched, once they've discovered that, that's a separate bubble they live in. You can't turn it off. You can't turn off that idea. That awareness and knowledge doesn't exist in non-nifka people. They hear stories and things, but it's not personal. They're still living in this idealized bubble of Hatznei Aleches. It's not negate to them. It's lomdus. Maybe they hear words and stories and they don't want to understand it, but it's outside. These poor kids and now living in a world where they're, so to speak, fully aware of themselves in these inyanim, and they're living in it. They live in it. It's part of them. They don't just turn it off. They are aware of it and probably, I don't go into too much details about it, so you understand, but they're probably involved with themselves in this sugya one way or another. They now get involved in that sugya privately, quietly, no one knows, because of the pagia. The pagia brought them into the sugya. What is it like for such a child to go to school every day, to yeshiva or school, and every day hear drashas about Hatznei Aleches, about covering the body, about shmiras einayim, about shmiras haguf, and passionate, drashas of chizuk, and of this is the asaydus of our lives. This is who we are, Rabbi Sai. What does that child think when they hear the message brought to them? This is who I am. This is who we are. This is what Yidden are. You know what? A person who does these things, they're a goy. They're shegets. Nicht from uns. Der chutz lemachne. Das a goy gomer. Das for goyim. Das nicht for uns. They hear well-meaning, and I say it very honestly, totally well-meaning rebbeim and teachers saying these inyanim to the kids with great passion, crying sometimes, with mashalim and stories, unaware that in a class of 30 kids, 6 of them have been nifka on average. And what's happening is 6 kids are being driven off the derech. Because 6 kids are hearing, we're not Zer Yisrael. Ich bin a guy. If I'm interested in myself like this, because they're not misyachas, they're kids. They don't understand yet why they feel this way, what happened. They were brought into this world against their choice. You understand? They have no lomdus. All they know is that I'm very attracted to and interested in orangutan in this sugya, that I'm being told tag teglach every day that I'm a guy. So, can you begin to imagine the damage that has on them? But think about what I was saying before, the word attachment. Well, we want them to be connected to Al Masorah. And when they hear these Lashonis day after day after day, what they have is a disconnect. In fact, I've been many times challenged. I have relationships professionally with some of the Lahavdil, the leaders in the secular world on the sugi of trauma. I have relationships with them. We talk to each other. And in one time we were discussing what the word trauma means. How do you define the word? What I suggested is I believe the word trauma means disconnect. The Eibishter made you when something horrific, frightening, terrifying is happening, traumatizing, you disconnect. The Eibishter made it. We're going to explain the lomdus, the science of this soon, but you disconnect from it. So where we want attachment for Masorah, attachment to stay close to the family, attachment to stay close to our Beis Medrash and our Masorah and our culture and our lives, what's actually happening every time they sit in class, a child that was nifka and these in Yonim, every moment they sit in class, we're actually detaching them. We're disconnecting them. It's no one's fault. I hope no one, I actually have a beautiful drasha that I've used many times to explain to Rebbeim and Mechanchim, how do you address this then? If we know this on average 6 kids in the class, there'd be nifka, so what's the Rebbe meant to do? So I have a ganze drasha, a mahalach. It's a very simple yesod how to handle it. And I've had many times the Rebbeim called me back afterwards, says it was like half of a fella, because when you do it properly and you address it properly and you talk to those kids, I say amongst us are such children and they know who they are. And whatever I'm saying now doesn't apply to you. You have a different mahalach in Avodas HaKodesh and how to get close to Hashem. You have a different way. Hashem chose you for a different mahalach. This language is so crucial. Hashem gave you a different mahalach, a harder mahalach. And you know who you are. And if it's happened to you, come to me privately and I'll show you what it is. All these Rebbeim call me afterwards because these kids come running and say, now what do I say? What is that? A different mahalach. But a Maisa, these are good kids still. You understand? If we catch them right away and acknowledge what's happened to them. But Lu Yitzhak, they sit there in a classroom, tag, taglach, they're hearing every day on and on and on that you're a goy. If you're interested in touching your own private buzz, you're a goy gomer. You're a shagets. Well, is it any surprise to us they go off? Why wouldn't they go off? The pain of that rejection, that disconnect, is so intense. It's not the Maisa. Rabbi, you have to understand, it's not the Maisa. People, I sat with Bati Dinim again and again and again. They're always done on what was the Maisa, what was the Pu'ula. It's nothing to do with that. It's not about which particular, because different things, a little kleiner thing can turn a child into interest in their private past because someone else was interested, and a one-time thing can open him up where he's now in the sugya of these inyanim. We have to understand that. It's so painful when you finally grasp it. And I've sat with children who finally, obviously as I work with them as young adults, and they tell me, I learned this from my clients, they told me what it felt like to sit in class. They were trying so hard to hang on. But they told me what their experience. They sit there crying and crying and crying as they describe what it felt like to listen to these drashas. All they're hearing is, Du bist a goy gama. Du bist a shigitz. We're embarrassed of you. Is it a surprise they go off? Of course they do. How can we blame them? This is the inyan, the sugya, both with boys and girls, of Hatznei Leches. Why? And they have a choice. They go off. Many of them, as we well know, will act out inappropriately. And these inyanim, obviously pre the chasna as kids, they act out this way. Why? And the main reason, turns out, they're acting out is because they're trying not to feel so bad. They're trying to say, this is normal. I'm enjoying myself. I feel good about this. They're trying to live because they actually want to kill themselves every day. Actually, every day want to kill themselves. They feel a desire to just throw themselves in front of a car all the time. And the hanhaga of acting out is actually a mahalach. They don't realize this. As they're adults and I work through their trauma backwards to help them recover, they understand that what they did was an attempt to survive. It was an attempt to live. I actually tell them, so what you did was a mitzvah, right? You should see their faces when I say it to them, because the pnimis is a yid. You understand? The pnimis is a yid. So when you tell them, so you were doing a mitzvah. And there's the right time to say such a zog. You understand? And you see them, the penny drops, that they themselves now chab. That's part of the refuah, that what I was doing all the time was a way of staying alive. I said, ich bin nicht a Pesach, I'm not a Rav, but maybe betulo zeh kiyuma, maybe you kept yourself alive. I mean, no one can ever tell you, Allah chavein morin came. But I don't know, maybe you kept yourself alive. And the penny drops. It's so beautiful to watch their face. It's such an amazing, heartwarming moment when the penny drops and they realize that's what they were doing. Because you understand, they don't have the lomdus, but as they get it, they free themselves. And almost every time, by the way, it's the most amazing thing. Because when that penny drops, every time, the next thing they say is, how do I heal from this? You see, the Pintel Yid never left. They're acting like a shegetz. They're doing devarim asurim norayim. And yet when you give them Havana and what happened and how and everything else, is kumtos from the pneumias, how do I recover? It's amazing. No, do you understand? That's why I said, when you understand the sugya, the shaylas fall away and it's so obvious what to do. It becomes so clear. That's atznei aleches. That's enough of that. Limud Torah, that's the other big trauma. So, what happens to a child who, for whatever reason, and there are lots and lots of reasons why children can't learn. Lots. You can make a list of them. There's the pashta reason for some children, they just don't have a clear head. They don't know, they're not smart. They're just not. They're not gifted with that. There are kids who've been traumatized, by the way, the Hatznei Leches kids are so busy and orangutan with themselves, they go out of learning immediately because I'm going to learn Torah that tells me I'm a shegetz. I just can't. So they fall out. There are children whose parents' expectation of them is just unrealistic, who got into a school or a yeshiva that is way above their thing because the parents put them, forgive me, but without knowing, because I don't think parents are horrible people, we're all good, but without knowing what we did, my ego put my child in a school where they don't belong. It was way above them. It wasn't a gear to them. They couldn't do it. See, when a child goes to school every day, and every single day, for whatever reason, there's lots and lots of reasons why kids can't learn. But every day he goes to school and he can't learn. And every day we bribe them. Someone just wrote me a whole letter from Eretz Yisrael. Rosh Shiva wrote me a letter and he asked me an email, could I explain to his manal that bribing a kid to learn more is not good for him. Because he knew I know it. And I explained to him, it's a terrible thing. It means like this. When we bribe a kid to learn, it means we all know that learning is horrible. We all know her learning is horrible. So we're going to give you money to make you do something you don't want to do because it's horrible. It's such a crazy thing. They just become manipulators. It doesn't help. By the way, I just want to move on a shaila because people often frag on me on this shaila. And in fact, that manal from that school did. He said, "Aber steht Adam nifel kfi pelaisov." Rishonim say Adam nifel kfi pelaisov. So maybe if we bribe and we get and we push and we condition, eventually, it's going to work out, right? That's what everyone says. And I say that's such an inaccurate learning is Rishonim, making a mistake. Steht is Adam nifel kfi puloisov. There's a vav on the end. His pulas, not your pulas, not the Rebbe's pulas, not the Tato, the Zayda's pulas. His pulas. Adam nifel, if a person wants it, and he comes and says, please help me, I want this so badly, it's my pneumis is wants this, then taka Adam nifel kfi puloisov, because it's his pulas, and then giving him chizuk and rewards and strengthening him. If your kid comes to you and says, Tati, I need incentives, I want to go learn, can you help me, Tati? It's gewaldig, prasim, rewards, moiradik. But to bribe a kid who doesn't want it, all you're doing is conditioning him to know that we all hate learning. Learning is horrible. It's too hard. That's why we're paying you. It doesn't like learning better. It doesn't work. Imagine all the kids who have different problems and issues and struggles and simply can't learn. And in our world, learning is not, again, it's not something we do, it's who we are. It's part of our fabric of our nation. It's part of what it's who we are. We're like they say, the people of the book. We learn Torah. We don't learn Torah because it's our mitzvah besonder. We learn Torah because that's a yid. That's what you do. So imagine a child who goes through the system and is fully aware that with his hardest efforts, he'll never get more than around a 70 at the best on any bechina. What does that child feel like? Now, I'm serious. I mean, you have to put themselves in your shoes of whether that is actually traumatic. To go and be affirmed daily in a class, in the kita. Boys and girls today, I don't know, in the Chassidish world, I tell you, in the Yeshivish world, the girls, they're bigger lamdonim and nach and halacha and all sorts of things than the boys. You know, they forget Shmuel Aleph, they have to know Shmuel Aleph and Shmuel Beis. And every Radak in Shmuel Beis, I mean, who knows every Radak in Shmuel Beis? The girls do. We push them into a place of expectation as if that's normal. And it is, for all the kids who are natural learners, it's like a geschmack of life. Such a geschmack of life. If you're a natural learner, it's really a geschmack of life, our system. You enjoy it. It's very interesting. It's very exciting. But if you're not a natural learner, if the best you're going to get, even with very hard work, is a 70 or 80, what does it feel like? You know, the Rebbes, Ruba Deruba, are so, and I understand it, there's not a criticism, by the way, of Rebbes or anyone. I think we need Havon and training what to do about it. But the Rebbes light up. When a child asks Tosas Kasha, child in 7th grade, and he asks a Kasha, and it turns out it was Tosas Kasha, what does a Rebbe react? Almost every Rebbe is excited beyond. I mean, I've had classes where they tell the boys, stand up, everyone. Yankel asks Tosas Kasha, everyone stand up. Now, I know they mean well. I get it. I understand it. But you have no idea, it's been told to me by countless people in our world what it felt like every time that happened, knowing that will never happen to me. I will never really be a nachas to my parents, to my school, my system, nothing. And some of the research I did, and this is really a painful thing, and some of the research I do is with mechanchim. This research is almost always with mechanchim. You know, when I talk to them about what the experience of the children are in the classroom, you know, I get feedback. Plus, I meet a lot of, in Eretz Yisrael, we lived there almost 10 years, we have regularly Shabbosim with Bachrim or Meidlich. They come for Shabbos, 9-10 kids, we're mechazik them, you know, from the best of the best yeshivas and places, and we get talking, so I get a lot of information from them too. And it turns out that there's only about 20% of all the kids in the whole system who are natural learners. About 20% are natural. It's just easy. It just flows. It's just something geschmack and I enjoy it. About 20% are just turned off completely, don't make it through the system. And about 60% feel, and this is really sad, tolerated. We tolerate them. They're okay. They don't feel we have a geschmack. You know, they don't feel celebrated. So when you have trauma, if you have no trauma and you're not celebrated, okay, you're part of a system, you'll find you go forward, it doesn't throw you off. But when you go through trauma of some sort, when you can't learn and you know it, as hard as you tried, just that geht nicht. For a lot of different reasons, and you know this, imagine a child's experience of life, all these years, 12 years or more, going through the system, knowing I will never be celebrated. Why would they want to stay with that system? There's the disconnect, you see. That's where they get disconnected. Because unless you had this perfect chinuch, as I described at the beginning, that you have the resilience and your parents sit down with you and they give you another mahalach and they show you how you're of value to Klal Yisrael. How are you of value? Every child has a birthright, every yid, that we should show them how are you valuable to Klal Yisrael. Where do you fit? What's your role? What's your place? And these kids 100% do not feel I have any value to Klal Yisrael at all. At best, Klal Yisrael tolerates me. How do I know it? Because if I'm off for 2 weeks with a cold, no one calls. I realize they're happy I was not there. And sometimes they even say it when I came back. Uncle, take another week off, it's fine. I know what they're feeling. It's awful. These two amudim, you see, Hatznei Leches and Limud HaTorah, this is trauma, real trauma. Let's not fool ourselves. This is trauma disconnects, built on a not healthy enough, perfect parenting, which basically we all do, more or less good enough. When they go through this, look, I'll give you another example, impulse disorder. Everyone talks about ADD. Today everyone knows, they've heard of ADD, even ODD, oppositional defiant disorder. We've heard of these things. But how many people understand what exactly is an impulse disorder? What is it? What is an impulse disorder? I'm going to explain it to you. In 2 seconds, you'll see what a crisis for these poor children. An impulse disorder meant as every one of us, every healthy, non-impulse disordered person, when we go through the course of life, something threatening, something frightening happens to us. The brain has what we in English is cognition, awareness, havana. You're aware there's a threat. The brain registers there's a threat in front of me. Then you have to have, what am I going to do? How am I going to respond to it? For example, let's say we walked out of here to the car and a huge wild dog came running at you. This is a threat. Les mandama. I don't want to get bitten by a big wild dog. I hate them. So I'm going to run away. But what am I going to do? I have choices how to react. In this space, it's called a synapse, a space between cognition and reaction in the brain. There's literally a space. In that space, the brain populates the space with many options and choices for how to deal. In a millisecond, boom, it gives us choice. For example, the brain assesses very fast. Should I try and get my key out my pocket and jump into the car, open and get in the car? Can I do that before the dog gets to me? Should I run back in the building? Should I climb over a fence? Should I fight it with my briefcase? Should I kick it? I mean, there's many options on that list. Which one do we choose? Right? We have a space between the awareness of the threat and reacting to the threat. Which one should I choose on the list? So I choose the one highest on the list that will deal with the threat and best preserve my dignity, my kavod. The one that I can remain mechubed the most and deal with the threat. So if I could deal with the threat most mechubed by running through the street and my hat flies off, but I get in the car, it's a bissel nish mechubed. But I got in the car, I'm safe, I'll let the hat fly off. But if that's not good enough and I'm not going to make it and I got to climb over the fence, chances are I'm climbing over the fence. Chances are, I'll do whatever is the best thing that also best preserves dignity. That's this list. It happens in a microsecond, in no time at all. And then we respond and we deal with it. That's how a healthy, gesunde person functions. I want to show everyone, just so we'll have compassion, deep, deep compassion. It's heartbreaking compassion. Was meant ADD and ODD when they have an impulse disorder? Ready? I'm going to show you. Remember, we said there's cognition, there's reaction. In the middle, there's a hierarchy of choices. Watch this. This is an impulse disorder. What you're looking at is an impulse disorder. There is no space between cognition and reaction. That's the damage. That's the disorder. They don't have a space. So they take the first thing off the list. There is no list. Whatever comes to their head, they do it. And 99 times out of 100, it's the worst thing for personal dignity, but it's the best for dealing with the problem. This is the tragic life of children with impulse disorder. They will always choose the worst thing. Not because they're bad, but because they didn't have a space. Now take that kid, and let's add all these children into the classroom too, with not so perfect parenting. They're going to react from early on to situation. A kid mooches with him, right? Everyone does that. Kids, they mooch with each other in the classroom when they're little kids. He pokes him in the ear. The ADD kid stabs him with a knife. Not a knife, a pencil. Stabs him with a pencil. Oh, Hatzalah come, there's blood everywhere. It's Sakanas Nefoshes, they want to throw him out of school. Well, he's a murderer? No, he has impulse disorder. When he got poked in the ear and it hurt him, he saw the pencil and he wasn't really at all trying to hurt. He's actually his friend. Oh, but in the moment, he only had one option. Now imagine when, and the Rebbe says, quieten down, kids, and the kid with ADD is very likely to say, why? Soon. And the Rebbe goes crazy. Chutzpah. Children like this with impulse disorder are conditioned to believe we hate them. We don't want them. And they fit in the sugya of trauma just like these other two, Hatznei Leches and Limud Torah. They fit there right alongside them. In fact, so many of these kids do have ADD. This is how they got into their problems in the first place. So we have a whole bunch of kids who are really trauma victims. And this helps us because instead of having attachment with us, our kehillas, our yadus, our ruchnias, our Masorah, they want to detach, not because they made choices to detach, but because staying close is painful. Staying close to it is abusive. Staying close means I have to accept I'm a goy, I'm a shegetz, I'm not desired, I'm not wanted, I'm not ever going to be celebrated by this community. And without tipul, they go off and we lose them. And they go off with a vengeance and with an anger. Let me take this further into the sugya of trauma. I want to explain trauma very, very well. So we understand what trauma, the science behind trauma. Actually, I think this is a good time to give out the... I think so. Let's give it out. If everyone could... we're going to hand out some pictures. But I said there's 5 or 6 pictures in here. If you could just bear with me, and let's do one at a time. I know everyone's going to want to look through them all. But if you could stay with me and just stay, let's start with this one. When you look inside, let's start with this picture. I'll wait for everyone to get it. This is the one we're going to start with. If we could hold off with all the others, and I'll explain them as we go, I'll show you which picture we're going to talk about. This is the first one. So in this picture, we see a picture of the brain. And we're going to be talking to understand trauma, to really verstehe the Indian of trying. That's my goal now. If we can get, or both sides, if you can get the sugya, what's going to happen is, again, once you understand it, in halacha, it becomes a lot of things open up and become much more obvious. And I'm going to tell you actually a couple of chidushim we're working on. Just so we're waiting. In Kesher Nafshi, we have a few rabbonim in the last few years, a few talmidei chachamim I brought on board who would be able to work with us and guide us in the application of halacha for parents, for how to respond to shailas properly. And we have our own people. One of them, his name is Yitzhak Schwartz, is my chavrusa. He's actually my oldest friend. We just, this Elul, we passed our 50th year of being friends and chavrusas. It's 50 years, which is pretty amazing. He's a prolific Talmud Chacham, the Rav of Beis Medrash, my Beis Medrash in Yerushalayim, and we learn together every morning. And he and I together have been working through, and he's got some serious chidushim coming up that we hope we're going to publish in the not too distant future to guide Rabbanim, Meir Haror, with certain hasagas of how to think about the sugya, but all through his understanding, that we work together. Can I go forward yet with this? Does everyone have this picture? Good. Okay, so let's take a look at this picture. This picture is the brain. And what we're going to understand, let's forget the hippocampus for the moment, but let's focus only on two things. The prefrontal cortex, that's this part of the brain. The front part of the brain, you can see here, is called the prefrontal cortex. And there's a little tiny bit in the limbic system called the amygdala. So we're going to, on the journey of understanding trauma, is to understand this little tiny bit of the brain called the amygdala. Because the purpose of the amygdala, the God-given gift of the amygdala, is think of the amygdala, this tiny little piece. Its job is to scan everything, all your senses, everything, constantly. Is there danger around me? Am I in danger? The job of the amygdala is to scan. It's like a radar, satellite, high microphone. It goes through all the senses, sight, sound, hearing, touch, vibration on the floor, everything, to sense, is there danger around me? The amygdala of a regular, healthy, non-traumatized person has a full body scan of all your senses 4 times a second. You don't feel it. It's in the background. It's just going rapidly in the background 4 times a second. The amygdala of a trauma victim, there's a Dr. Stephen Porges, he's Grade Yid, I'm friendly with him, he did the research, 42 years research on this, found the amygdala of a trauma victim goes 100 times a second. Up to 100 times a second. Which is why, by the way, trauma victims often report, it's one of the ways it's like someone walks in my office, it's like I'm attuned and I can sense they're a trauma victim. And one of the ways I didn't even realize, I realized, it's like a sixth sense, is they're on edge. They're edgy. You can feel it in them. They're on edge. But that's the amygdala scanning 4 times a second. Up to 100 times a second for a trauma victim. This is very, very important stuff because it's going to be neget halacha very much. Now, why is this important? Why is this important? So, I think let's take a look at this picture. Can we look at this picture next? So in this picture, this is called the triune brain. It's a model of the brain where we look at 3 different parts, the green, the blue, and the red. The green part is what we call the executive functioning. That's the prefrontal cortex. This is where we process life. This is where we think, rational, decision-making, choices, to be empathic. We're going to see what it means soon, but it's all up here in the prefrontal cortex. The blue area is the limbic system. In the limbic system is where the amygdala is stuck in the middle of the limbic system. And in the limbic system, it's about emotions. It's basically, am I safe? Am I cared for? The executive functioning is everything. Thinking about life. But the limbic system is one thing. Am I safe? So when a person's amygdala triggers the brain and tells it there's danger happening around you, you go right away into the limbic. That means there's one, by the way, amazing, there's only one synapse, one connection between the executive functioning and the limbic system, the amygdala, one connection. The rest of the brain has a network where everything, you go, if you don't go this way, you can go that way. There's always different ways to go through the brain to connect. But with the limbic and through the amygdala to the executive function is one. When it turns off, it turns off. It means it shuts down the prefrontal cortex. When danger strikes, the amygdala says you're in danger. It shuts that connection, and you're out of this part of the brain. You're in the limbic system, which is only about, am I safe? Am I cared for? That's the only cheshbon. If the danger continues, and it's even more serious, you go out of the limbic system into the survival state, into the brain stem, where it's in your body. You've probably heard language, those involved with medicine, the somatic work, it's in the body. They always say it's in the body. This is the chidushim in the field of understanding treatment of trauma. It's no longer even in your head. There's no one to talk to. It's all in your body. It's not up here at all. Talking to someone is an utter waste of time. You have to bring them back online. They're in the brainstem, which starts at the back and goes all the way down the spine. So there's no one to talk to. This is offline. Think of it as offline. It's offline. So just telling them, try harder. A kid who's offline from learning, and you say, try harder, he looks at you, has no idea what you're talking about, has no idea what that even means. They have no button to try harder. He's in the limbic, or he's in the survival part. He's gone. This is huge nafka mina in everything we do in Kesher Nafshi, because ruba de ruba, almost all the kids, children or parents of Kesher Nafshi people, live most of their lives triggered in the survival part of the brain. And so you'll begin to understand what we're doing is bringing them back online, so we have someone to talk to. We have someone we connect with. Because telling them drashas and giving them chizukim and bribing them is all stuff that's negate to the executive states. That's not negate to the survival part. There is no one home. Adarabba, when you do it, they view you as the vaitadika scary person, which puts them further into the survival part of the brain. It's exactly the wrong thing to do. It's crazy, but it's the wrong thing. Just put on your tefillin shefer. Just do it for Tati. Do it for Zayda. Zayda, you think Zayda, he went to Auschwitz. Put on your tefillin. This kind of rate for someone who's already here sinks them further down there. Because that's not me. I'm the shagets. I'm the guy. First I got to stop him feeling he's a guy. Just scaring him and guilting him more, it just shoves him further down. In a trauma state, the whole point, the God-given gift of trauma reaction is to protect us. Imagine the marshal. You're on a Cholamoid trip. If you're very smart, you don't go to any of these ridiculous waste of time amusement parks. It's mamish with sugar to go to these places. Right? It's just miserable. A lot of money and a waste of time. There's no connection. You go to a park. You take a frisbee, you take a ball, you take your kids, you take a thing, and a picnic, and you go to a Cholamoid trip, and it's beautiful, and there's attachment, there's connection. A father plays with his children. It's mamish geshma. Everyone goes home smiling. It's amazing. You go to the amusement park, the moment you get them in the car afterwards, all the kids are screaming and yelling. It was ridiculous. The lines were too long. I had a rotten time. The father's miserable. You just spent so much money. It's ridiculous. But imagine you're in a park. Cholamayid, playing with your kinderlach. It's beautiful. The sun is nice. It's all great. And about 100 yards away, out of the undergrowth, comes a medium brown bear. Walks out of the undergrowth about 100 yards away. So let's first analyze what you're not meant to do, and let's analyze what the amygdala makes you do. What you're not meant to do is say, oh, look, Tati, look. He says, the brown ones are the ones that kill you, or the black ones? I forget. Which one? Can we look it up, Tati? No. You don't start a lumdus which type of... You don't start saying, can we take a picture? Tati, can I go and shmeichel the bear? You leave everything instantly and tell the kids, back up quickly into the car, leave everything. And you get in the car as fast as you can. The amygdala says, leave everything. The bear's going to ruin your picnic and all the rest of it. But that's what the amygdala says. It takes you offline. It doesn't want you thinking about which type of bear and clearing. Maybe we can scare it. I heard Tati, if we all run at it. The amygdala says, don't clear anything. Get in the car. So the amygdala takes you out of the prefrontal cortex, the place of clearing shailas here, where you think things through, make choices and options and decisions. It takes you out of that instantly, puts you in the limbic. And if people start still not getting, you scare your kids and get everyone in the brainstem part, because safety is all we're interested in right now. The amygdala converts a potential threat to a real threat. And it forces you to react by shutting down any possibility of you thinking through the sugya of brown bears or black bears. You don't want that. That's for afters. Get in the car first. And you notice when you're all safe in the car, then you can start, you come back online. And then you can start thinking, Taka, which one and what it is, and you have a discussion because you're safe. So then you come back online, the brain comes back online, and you can have a conversation, an interesting conversation about the bear. The purpose of the amygdala is to shut down rational thinking in order to be safe. The word we think of in the field of trauma treatment, the word is adaptive. This is a very important word for a Rav to understand. As I do in therapy, it's a very, very crucial concept. Adaptive means a trauma victim adapts to survive. You see, just like I told you that Nebuch, La'aleinu, a child that was nifka in a bad way and then goes off and acts in a non-sneistic fashion, essentially that's adaptive. They're adapting to survive. They're not trying to be, you understand, bad. They're adapting to survive. They're trying to convince themselves nothing bad happened to me. I'm enjoying life. That's an adaptation. They're adapting to the situation. As I observe to my clients, it's very interesting that when you do the work well with them, and they feel that you really believe that, the penny drops. Baruch Hashem, you survived. What you were doing survived. It's gewaldig. And when they finally feel that you really believe that, and they look at you in shock, I'm doing all these schmutziger things, and you're proud of me that I'm surviving? Yes, you survived. When they finally believe you believe that, this is what I watched when I took every time I always tried to take the kids I worked with to their Das Torah. If I could, I'd have a conversation first and tell them what I wanted. And that's what I want. I want that response from a Rav to tell the kid, yeah, you survived. Okay, in the Rav's head, Batula Zerkim, okay, fine, I got it. And you tell it to them before they walk in. Let me tell you what you maviach with that. This is so amazing. There's another word in English. Everyone understands the word adaptive, yes? Maladaptive in English means when it's bad for you. It's maladaptive, it's not good. The adaptation is bad. Adaptive is good. So when you've bought into adaptive, when they understand, I look at you, you were traumatized, Nebuch, it wasn't your fault. What you're doing was for your survival. You did good. I'm not saying I encourage you to do shmutzi hazatan, but I understand why you did it and you survived. It's gewaldig. When that penny drops, then we can sort of scratch our heads and say, I wonder though if it's becoming maladaptive for you, that it's something now you would like to move away from and recover. Do you understand the Lomdus is so profound? Once you've established adaptive, And it's real, especially when it comes from a Rav. You have no idea the power of a Rav in the room. I've had many, many people in my room together doing therapy with me. And the Rav, he knows exactly what his role is. And he says, yeah, Taki, you survived. Again, I'm not saying, it's a mitzvah to do what you're doing, but it could be it was. It could be you survived. I don't know. Maybe. You don't have to give a hechsher to the behavior, but give havana to the behavior frees me to be curious with the kid. I wonder when it's going to become maladaptive for you because it's interfering in your life. It's moiridik, Rabbi Say. You can't imagine the power of that moment, and you see the tshuva starts right there. But it came out of emes. It came out of a real deep rachmanis and havana of why they did it in the first place. It was an innocent kid. It was nifka or couldn't learn or whatever it was. Even in learning, I have adults come to me, and it turns out they never open a Gemara ever again. They're done. They're done. They can't. And when they understand that was adaptive, because every time you open a Gemara, you hate Hashem, and you hate Rabbanim, and you hate your childhood. And as we heal your religious trauma, we call it religious trauma because for them that's what it is, right? Or we call it learning trauma. That was one of my big chidushim, learning trauma. You can be traumatized by learning and therefore react badly. When you heal it and you say, but it's adaptive to you not to learn. It'd be crazy for you to open a Gemara. When you buy in, I promise you a bayside, you could do it yourself. It's Bodak and Manusa, amazing, incredible to watch. As you buy in and support their decision not to open a Gemara because it's adaptive, you bring them out of the red into the blue. You might actually, if you do it deep enough and honest enough, and they're really convinced, you really believe what they did was the right thing, to stop getting triggered. You famach the Gemara was the best thing you ever did, was closing that Gemara, and they believe you believe it. You bring them back here, and guess what they say to you next? But Rebbe, I want to be able to open a Gemara. It's half of a fella, because you brought them back into the executive states. It's half of a fella. It was when you understand what they did was adaptive because the amygdala took them away from feeling horrible, terrible, disgusting, and I want to die. And we validate that because we chap what happened to you. Again, I'm not endorsing, I would never say to a kid, you did the right thing, being, you can't say this language. It's delicate. I had Rabbanim work with me, and I worked it through within myself never to say such words. You can't say you did the right thing. It's asal halacha, obviously. You can't do that. But I can say to a kid, for example, who's smoking on Shabbos, and the kid's smoking, the parents are like, and I say, listen, I work with the kid, I get it. I get you need that. I haven't said you should do it. I haven't said it's mutter. I've said I understand you need it. I said maybe you'll do in the bedroom, and I got the father to put an exhaust fan in the window and get a double door so it doesn't smell in the house. And then tell the kid, listen, what goes on in your bedroom on Shabbos is between you and the Bara Olam. Hashem's in there with you. What am I telling him? It's adaptive. I'm telling him, I'm not being masking you should smoke. I'm not lighting a cigarette. That I can't do. But I could actually put the cigarettes on the bed before Shabbos and say, listen, what goes on in here in this room is between you and the Bara Olam, between you and Hashem. In other words, I'm building a sugya of adaptive in the kid's heart where he understands, I get it. Again, we don't cross the line in halacha of saying you should go and smoke on Shabbos. That you can't do. That's also. But you can say, I understand you. I heard this from Gedolei Olam. It was so moirdig. The first time I ever heard this, where I told the father, and the parents had a kid off, and he was running around in the streets doing all kinds of davarah on Shabbos. And it was in the early days when they came out with a video machine, and I told them they should get it, and put the videos for him to watch. This was the shaila: should we give it to him to watch on Shabbos, or let him go on the streets with the goyim? He was going down the drain pipe out in the streets. Which is worse? I asked the shaila to Gedolei Olam. They said to me, very interesting, they should buy the video thing, put it on his bed, and this is what they told me to sell. It was amazing. I did this session on a Friday, and I saw the boy on a Sunday. On Friday, it was nothing to do with me. I wanted the father to be the hero, not me. So the father gave him this machine on Friday, Erev Shabbos, and says to his son, Yingala, listen to me well. If you would come to me and ask me, Tati, I'm struggling. You know I'm struggling. I have a choice. I can go out with the goyim and drinking and doing kol dovara because I'm going crazy. Or I could sit at home in the room with the headphones watching this. If you would ask me which is worse in halacha, I would tell you B'stom the goyim running around the streets. They picked him up in a motorbike, and took him. I'd have to tell you that's probably worse. That's what they were allowed to say. Listen to this story. I heard this from Gedolei Olam. This is what they should tell him. The father did it. Couldn't believe. A really shiv shalekud guy. And I told him, this is what you were told to do. And he did it on Friday. Sunday morning, this boy came to me. He was all of about 15. And I'm telling you, Rabbi Say, he floated into my office. He didn't walk. He was not on the floor. He was like floating in. He was on a high. And he walks in, he says, you don't know who my father is. And he gives me a drasha about his heilige father. And he announced in that moment, I know I'm going to be from one day. Is that crazy? That's amazing? That's exploiting the sugya of adaption. He's going to do it anyway. He's gone, right? So we're going to exploit that sugya and understand him. The next 2 days later, the same boy is telling me, I know I'm going to be from one day. Because we brought him back. You understand? That boy, by the way, is from today. I met him at a conference. Recently, I was speaking at a conference, and he came over to me. I couldn't believe. Here's this from boy who apparently his home, Friday night, is the place where the struggling kids come, and he's mechazik. He and his wife are mechazik struggling kids Friday night. The same kid. Say again? Oh, so then, see, adaption. Wait, remember, I built the sugya on connection, right? It's all built around this sugya, right? That we should be connected to our nafsha kshura b'nafsha. The trauma of not learning, or the piyah, these inyanim, they can disconnect them because the messages they get is you're nicht from unzera, we don't want you. So they go offline. Everything triggers them offline. As the father walked in and said, listen, if you ask me this shaila, I would have to tell you that's worse. The fact he understood his son's need, there was the adaption. Without saying it's mutter, you can't say it's mutter, without just putting it on his bed. That acknowledgement brought him back here, because that's, you understand, he brought him back online where he felt, oh, I'm not a shagats. If my father's giving me this video thing, right? Obviously, I'm not a shagats. My father even referenced halacha about me, that this will be worse in halacha. Like, it's amazing. Brought him back online. 2 days later, he's telling me, I know I'm going to be from one day. You don't know about my father. What a chosh v'yidi is. That's how the adaption. Do you understand? We understood it. The goal, Rabbi Say, is here. Look, let's look at this one, and we're going to get even deeper. Take a look at this one. This is so profound, right? So look at this. We have on the left executive functioning. That's the prefrontal cortex, right? Executive functioning. On the right, the limbic system when you go offline. So offline is on the right. This picture. Everyone has this picture? The blue picture with the red, this one. Yeah? So take a look at this picture. On the left, let's look on the right. The limbic brain, that's offline. The limbic is offline. That's where emotions are. When you go offline, you're there. Look what it says. Fight, freeze, stress response. Thinks, am I safe? Do people want me? Emotions live here. When you go offline, I don't know if I'm safe. I go offline. When someone's offline, you can't talk to them. I'll show you why. Take a look at the 9 functions of the prefrontal cortex. Look what they are. Empathy. Empathy. What's that in Yiddish? Übergegebenheit? How do you say it? Mitgefühlt. Insight. How do we say it? Insight in Yiddish? Insight means I have Havana, a pneumistica Havana. Yeah? Response flexibility heißt es, where I can control myself, not like to stab him with a pencil. I can contain my emotions and feelings. I have a Havana up here that tells me to contain myself. Emotional regulation. I can not react angry and scream and curse and, that I can contain myself. Body regulation. I can control my body. I'm not going to jump up and threaten people or run out the room, because I'm upset. Morality. I'm a moral, ethical person. I act in a healthy way. Morality. Intuition. Achap, what's going on? Mevin dava mitoich dava kind of intuition. Attuned communication. What could be more important than that? That I actually connect and talk and we can have a reciprocal conversation. I say something, you answer me. I'm not scared of you. We can talk to each other. And fear modulation, which is I'm not running away. I'm not terrified. Now just imagine, Rabbi say, for 1 minute, this is so painful to realize. Kids who are trauma victims, when they're triggered, this shuts down. Now imagine the life, how are they meant to function when all this shuts off? Like what exactly are they meant to do? If they don't have access, and there's only one connection, one synapse that connects the prefrontal cortex to the amygdala, and the amygdala says you're in danger, boom, this shuts down. And imagine being yelled at that moment. Answer, tell me, why are you doing these schmutzige Sachen? Tell me, I want to hear. Why are you doing it? To someone who doesn't have any of these. They just want to punch you or run out of there.